Right, I'll wait for comments to pop up and then that we should know. So we should be live. I know sometimes it takes a minute for it to process with YouTube.
So I don't know why it does that.
I don't know. It's like there's a delay or something.
There's a delay.
Yeah, but there's no comments popping up yet, so I don't know. It's fine. Okay, yeah, so we're here. It's for our very last live show. It's done by Star. I guess I'll have you guys introduce yourselves again. I am, you know me, probably because you're on my channel, Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany. And we'll just go around clockwise if you guys want to.
I was like, wait, that's clockwise. Okay. Hey, I'm Isabel or Izzy from Happy for Now. I'm already drinking. It's gonna be great, guys. From Happy for Now. And this was a ride. This whole journey was delightful. I'm so glad you brought us along on it. Maybe not.
I'm not even done with it yet.
I'm like still waiting for comments to pop up on here. Like, I swear.
That's funny. I can see them.
Can you?
I can see the comments too.
They're going.
On StreamYard?
Yeah, I can see them on StreamYard.
Yeah. What is going on with my computer? Dang it. Okay.
I have it up on my phone on silent, so
that's smart.
Fun times.
All right. Sorry, I don't know why it's not showing up for me. All right. It's fine. Except then I can't like put things live. Okay, hold on. Sorry, you can continue introducing yourselves. Thanks, Izzy.
Oh, Izzy, were you
I'm good.
done,
you can go.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Isabella, also known as the Feminist Bookworm. Currently a mess right now, but I'm an indie bookseller, but I'm also, I think, the resident twihard of the group.
You finished?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey,
y'all. I'm Ashley from Bookish Realm. I think everybody knows how I feel about the series. If I haven't said it enough, if I haven't put it in vlogs, if you didn't see that review, I'm not digging it. I haven't been digging it, but it's been an interesting journey. So I appreciate Bethany for bringing me along for the ride.
Oh, is it my turn?
Yes, your turn.
Okay. Honey Wash Day. My name is Michelle from Thor Wants Another Letter. And I don't know, I'm like halfway into it, and I am actually like liking this a lot more than what I've read so far. But like, not to say that I'm not completely creeped out in certain points, but yeah. Oofed.
I mean, the native characters are rarely on the page in this one.
Yeah, but he did say like a couple things where I was like, Edward, no. And then he tries to backpedal it a little bit, and I'm like, no, dude, no. Not today.
Okay, so for whatever reason, to people in the live, I'm like pulling this up on my phone so I can see your comments. I'm not going to be able to bring them onto the screen because for whatever reason, StreamYard doesn't want to show them to me. I don't know why, but I will try to like periodically look at my phone and see what you guys are saying. That's unfortunate. I don't know what the problem is. Oh well. So, thoughts? Well, we know Ashley didn't like it.
Oh, I'll start. I just want to say something quickly.
Go.
Is that there's really only one way you can like this book, and it's the boat that I'm in, and it's if you were a twihard back in the day, and not like someone who just like someone like not, and you can't have been like someone like Bethany who like read them because like everyone else was reading them, was like, oh yeah, they're fun, I like them. Like you have to be someone who like actually like actively loved them in order to still love or even like this book, because really the only way again to love it is really the nostalgia, because like the content is like, it's not objectively, it's not a good book. But you had to have loved it enough back then that the nostalgia is enough to push you.
I'm in the same exact boat. Like literally reading it, I got it on Friday and reading it just a little bit in the car while my husband went to go get groceries. And I just remember being like, oh my God, Edward, my broody boy again. And then, but then, you know, it gets creepy as it goes on. And I'm like, you creepy boy. Yeah. I still love you, but something's wrong with you.
I mean, I was a borderline Twihard, I feel like. I think I was like slightly too old to fully be a Twihard in a weird way, like being in high school, as much as like the younger fans. So like I appreciated some of the attempts that were made in this book. Was it slightly more enjoyable than that explaining?
The chat is saying, Jennifer says, I think Stephenie Meyer did not read Twilight before she wrote Midnight Sun. Certain scenes did not match them at all.
Yeah, didn't.
And
she didn't because she tried to watch
before, like I'm on Central Time, so at 6:00 she did a live like Q&A with her business partner, answering like just questions about the book and Twilight and just like everything. And one of the things she said was, someone asked a question about why did the original prom scene take place in the gym, and why did the prom scene in Midnight Sun take place in the cafeteria? And she was like, oh, well, that's just a mistake. She's like, I can't believe people didn't catch, like, she's like, I can't believe people didn't catch that like, in editing and whatnot. But she was like, I could have said like the gym and the cafeteria are the same place, which is valid because like in elementary school, at least, like where I went to school, the gym, like they just rolled in tables, like in that gym was the cafeteria. But like,
I actively do not like that woman.
I just feel like the bare minimum to write from another POV is to read your first book.
Well, I mean, how much was this actually edited, though? I mean, like, did they edit it?
Good question.
Well, she said that like someone asked a question about, there was this like line that was like really broody, and they asked, that was in the original draft that was leaked online, and I looked at it and it was like very, very similar, like almost word for word, page by page, the original like draft, like 250-ish page draft that was leaked originally, which is like why this book came out at this time and not a long time ago. And she's like, oh, well, like sometimes like my editor will be like, that's really like melodramatic. And she's like, yeah, I can get melodramatic sometimes. And I was like, sometimes you can get melodramatic.
Always.
Like, always.
Did Robert Pattinson read the book? Like, that's what I've been wondering this whole time. Like, did he read it?
He ran screaming out of the room. Like, if he walks into a store and that book is on the shelf, he turns around and leaves. Because he's like, absolutely not. Do not put me through that. That is what that man is saying.
Yeah.
I remember he was having, I saw it in an interview, I can't remember who it was with, but I do remember him talking about that Edward should be like so much more brooding. And I remember he was having like arguments with, I think it was like the director or somebody, because they were like, no, it's not like that. And he's like, no, it is like that. So which
film, like Catherine or Bill?
I want to say it was the first. I want to say it was the first Twilight movie.
So Catherine.
I remember he was talking about it, and I think it was like a 2009, 2010 interview, somewhere around there. Like they like to bring it up every couple of years.
Catherine Hardwicke, yeah.
I just thought that was interesting. I just want to know if he read it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I did this. I read it all at a weekend, which I was glad for. I didn't particularly enjoy. I had more fun vlogging about it than reading it, honestly. Like, laughing at it was more entertaining.
I surprised it for a couple people that didn't want to read it, and that was probably more fun as well. Like to be like, this is what happens.
Yeah,
this is really not great.
I mean, like I think there were a few things that were interesting, but that could have been in a short story collection. Like some of the backstory stuff was interesting, and like occasionally there were things where I was like, oh, that's cool. Like Alice planting evidence of Bella.
Yeah. That was interesting. That was cool.
That was my favorite scene. And someone said, one of the questions was like, that was my favorite scene. Like, what was your favorite scene to write? She's like, oh, thank you. Like, I'm really glad people liked that, because I was thinking of cutting it. Like, I didn't think people would be interested in that. And I was like, those are like the most interesting
Cut
scene.
the most interesting scene, why don't you?
Why is she still allowed to write?
Yeah. Like
Well,
I kept
a lot of
thinking
people
that
actually
maybe-
really like the host, like Kevin from Irish. Like I haven't read. I mean, I just saw the movie The Host like way
Oh,
back.
I liked the host.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to like the host, and what's interesting is I've been reading a lot of just interviews with her because I want to see what she's saying, and if she's like saying stuff about like what's going on in the world right now, and like if I can try to I just want to know like what she's saying, especially because of when this book is coming out. And she said like she wants to be remembered as the person that wrote the host, and I thought that was really interesting because obviously she's going to be forever remembered as the woman who wrote Twilight and not the
Does
host.
anybody sit down and really genuinely listen to the things that comes out this woman's like, come on now, like common sense. This is how I know common sense is not that common, because how can you actively sit down and say you want to be remembered for the host, but you know good and daggone well that you're going to be remembered for Twilight?
I know.
Like, that makes no sense.
Like tough
no
love.
sense.
Sorry.
I'm biased because me and her, we just don't vibe. I don't like
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I saw some people in the comments saying that Robert Pattinson was like trashing the books during filming the movie.
He would.
Go watch
I just Googled it.
interviews.
Hold on, I just Googled it.
Amazing.
It says that he says he hadn't read them in their entirety before getting the script. But then he said, I did my screen test, had the weekend before my next meeting for it, and read all 3 over one weekend. So apparently he claims he did read them.
Well,
Yeah.
Robert Pattinson looked like he was in pain the entire time he shot those movies anyway. So
I
he
mean,
looked like he was
Edward-
actively in pain.
Edward really was in pain. So.
Okay, can we talk about how Bella, like he has such rose-colored glasses with Bella? Like you would think she was really great if you read from his perspective.
Yeah, he didn't bother me
The
at
biggest
all.
mistake of this whole series was it not just all being from Edward's point of view or dual POV, because you don't get to see Bella had empty no thoughts in this book, and that was the best part.
Yeah.
But you know what bothered me about that is that I feel like she listened. I hated this book.
Okay,
what
Crazy
bothered
Random
me-
Life. I'm sure he did. Sorry, just like as I work in the film industry, I'm sure he did hate. He was miserable because they were actually filming in like Vancouver and like actually in Forks, and I'm pretty sure it was freezing. So I think I would have been miserable too.
Sorry, what Ashley? What bothered you about it?
I feel like she listened. She fed into every criticism that people had about Bella. And I feel like she tried to use Midnight Sun as an opportunity to rewrite Bella as a character, which made this book even less believable because you have gotten 4 books from Bella's perspective. Bella's not a nice person. All of a sudden, Bella is this worldly person. She's so kind. She cares about everybody. And I'm like, girl, that's not you.
Partnered with
I don't care how Meyer tries to twist it. That's not who Bella was. And I feel like she tried to slightly rewrite things because she didn't want to get criticized for the same things that she got criticized for in the first 4 books. But it's like, boo, you already wrote 4 books. So by rewriting this one character, it doesn't hold up. It didn't feel real to me because it was like, well, you are trying to change things up when this is supposed to be the same book from Edward's perspective. And then Bethany, I think you mentioned it in your vlog where it was like and I didn't watch the whole thing yet because I didn't want to be spoiled. Not that I really technically could have been spoiled because, oh my God, you want to talk about it was literally just a rewriting.
Rehashing the exact same thing. Oh
the
my God.
exact same things. But I think you had mentioned like at first, like he had this, like he wasn't really, like she had no appeal for him. And then all of a sudden it was like, how can they not see how beautiful she is?
Yeah.
How could I ever think
it's
she was
psychotic.
anything other than extraordinary beautiful? Like,
He went on this whole tangent about how she was kind and she was nice to people, but you don't see any of that in Twilight. I think his fixation on Angela Weber was probably like the weirdest part where he was like, she must want something. I've been reading her mind all day. And it wasn't until he was like, oh, she likes Ben. And so we got that little Emmett Edward
I thought
part.
that was
I
kind
thought
of
that
cute.
was
I thought that was kind of cute.
It was
I thought that was kind of cute. Okay, here's the
I
thing.
love Emmett,
Like,
though.
I loved this book. I'm not gonna lie, but again, I could not have loved it if I like. It's so problematic. It's much too long. Like, in my opinion, I see why it would be longer than Twilight, but it did not need to be this long. It
should have been 300 pages. It should have been
way too long.
300 pages.
However,
concise.
you know, I have such good memories of, you know, going to the movies with my friends, you know, reading these books with my friends, like really being excited about something like that for the first time. And this year has been shitty. Oh, sorry, it's not my channel. I don't want to. This year has been barfy. Like, it's just been horrible. It's been a horrible year for everyone. But for me, it was like I forgot that this year was horrible for 3 days while I was reading it. Not necessarily because it was a good book, but because it took me back to those times where things were good and Obama was president and everything was all hope and change and like
no, don't equivalate Obama to no, don't even use them in the
Oh my god, no, it's true. Like linking Twilight with Obama is just
sorry. No, I would never. I don't mean that they're like that. It brought me back to a time that was better. Where we weren't in quarantine, where John Lewis was still alive, like where I wasn't having.
You know, if Stephenie Meyer had her way, we probably would not have been having a black president at that point, given all of her criticism.
That's
that
also
part
true.
right there.
I'm sure she voted for Mitt Romney. I'm sure she voted for Mitt Romney.
Oh, of course.
That's the part.
Guaranteed.
I will say it's so strange though. She put on her website, like when she was talking about like, you know, like how like ways you can help like during this time and whatnot. She linked like the Obama Foundation on her website, and I was like,
that's what happens when people try to be woke and they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I don't know. It wasn't great. I felt like it was at least 300 pages too long.
Mm-hmm.
Edward was so creepy. So, you know what? Actually, okay, I got a comment on my vlog that I was like, that's kind of brilliant, where somebody said that they read the books imagining that it was a thriller from the villain's perspective, who was becoming more and more stalkerish.
Oh, like
and
you.
I was like, oh, that's, I can see that.
Like you.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the parts that I did legitimately like about this were the stuff about the other Cullens, and like the past history. Like, I mean, like objectively, I'm saying that I love this book, but I'm still saying that this was not a good book. Like, it's complicated. I'm trying to enunciate what I mean. I'm probably not doing a good job of it, but like those parts I can say that I legitimately enjoyed. And like, I'm not sure if I could still have, because then wouldn't have had the attachment to the characters that you have to the Cullens, like if you hadn't read the other books. But like, I thought those parts were interesting, and sort of the stuff about Rosalie, and also about more details about Emmett and his relationship with Edward and Alice, and how she came to be part of the family. And I don't know. I thought those parts were interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I would have read this as like a short story collection with like backstory. That would have been interesting.
Not a whole book though.
I will say, like, it's all in this. Like, I've been like looking at this like during all of our live shows. I just like brought it with me, and like even she again, and like the Q&A she did, she was like, oh, like all these like backstories are all in this book. So it's like you could just like flip through. Then again, you could just like flip through the character you were interested about and like read their entire backstory in here, which again kind of makes this book like.
Yeah.
I personally really enjoyed the parts where Edward had the part where Edward was playing piano and Esme is like sitting at the steps and she's like, play some more. And I thought that was very sweet that they included that, like that she was like through the whole series, you know, yeah, she's motherly, but like you see more of it in that part.
Yeah, I love Esme. Everyone thinks Esme's boring, and like maybe she is, but like I really like Esme.
I mean, I think seeing the Cullen group as a whole in this was better than anything else.
Bethany's face.
When she said she's boring, I was like, well, she's a little boring.
Like, she's as dry as toast to me.
I mean, but she's like, she has no personality.
I don't know. I mean, she comes from
I really like Esme. People say that about her, but like,
and you know, she had a baby and the baby died, and then all she wanted was children. And so technically she should be content and happy because she got exactly what she wanted. She got a son and like all these other kids that she loves dearly. And so like, yeah, she might be boring, but I mean, as a mom, does she really have to be like super.
I mean, I don't think she's
bad.
boring at all. But like a lot of people who read these books seem to think she is boring, and I was just like, she's a lot. I mean, I won't say like she seems to be such a lovely person that I'm also kind of just like, aren't you not? As like a mother, aren't you like a little least bit concerned that your son is like stalking this girl? Like, I mean, as a mom, like I would be concerned. Like, even if I loved my child, I would be concerned that that's what they were spending their time.
No one was concerned because it was normalized behavior for everybody.
I mean,
no one had the inkling that it was.
Well, and the other thing too is it's like I don't really trust Esme's perspective on romance anyway. I found it a little creepy, honestly, even reading the backstory of her and Carlisle, because the whole thing is that she met him when she was like a little girl and had a thing for him her whole human life until she died, and I was like, that's creepy.
Then he comes back for.
It's weird.
I mean, to be honest, I didn't find that part too, like, I found that less creepy than some of the other stuff, because what I understand about Esme is that she met him when she was 16, and she was like, she was someone who'd been like, I guess, abused and whatnot, which like, and putting that,
is that her backstory that she's been abused? Oh no.
Like Edward, Edgar.
The whole thing was her husband was abusive.
Reference?
Sorry, what, Michelle?
Was she trying to make a reference to Edgar Allan Poe and Annabelle Lee, who was like, he was in love with his cousin and she was like way younger than him? Was that?
Maybe. I mean, she's very into literary references that are very heavy-handed. Okay, did anyone count how many times she referenced Hades for Stephenie and pomegranates?
No, I
but I got sick of hearing about that stupid pomegranate. I should have bought one today.
I feel like it
irritated the hell out of me.
Honestly, at some point, like I just like eventually just like I don't have time to just like put all these tabs in. There's just gonna be too many. There's gonna be too much orange, too much whatnot. So I just like reverted to just like sticking in post-it notes with comments.
I wondered if the seeds were supposed to be symbolic of something else, because I got so sick of it.
Yeah, I don't know, but
she's had my seeds. I was like, oh, really?
What's also hilarious is on the title page.
Got off.
It's not even Hades and Persephone on the title page. It's
I'm dying.
Eros and Psyche, I think, and she said something about how like. Oh, because like the Hades and Persephone story is like dark and whatnot, and I wanted it to be like it's like a romance, it's a love story, so I wanted to put something more romantic on the title page. I just thought it was just...
But then I'm gonna reference the dark story, the whole book, repeatedly.
Yeah. Well, I just thought it was so funny. It's like, guys, in case you forgot for like a chapter, this is a Hades and Persephone retelling.
Don't forget the seeds.
I'm going with seeds. Actually, was all about him not getting off in life.
It was so uncomfortable.
That's my fanciful romance reader.
What part exactly are you laughing at?
Oh my god. It was just funny.
Oh my gosh.
Michelle, like which part exactly are you laughing at?
I'm still laughing at what Ashley said about the pomegranate.
Because it was so frustrating. Like, and I like pomegranates, and I don't understand how one woman single-handedly made me detest a fruit while reading an entire book. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, if I ever meet her in person, y'all, I'm exchanging words with that woman. I don't care how much money she makes.
You to get her to come to your library.
Hell no. Sorry, Stephenie. No.
Report this fight.
No, because I'm telling you, if they even think about that, if they even suggest, oh, we're thinking about having, no, I don't think that's appropriate.
Regis Rachel says this is bad pomegranate representation, and I agree.
That is everything.
It's baking time. Throwing hands on site. No, she had me locked up.
It's like it's getting too dark here.
Yeah.
Just gonna turn on the light. Hold on.
I feel like I'm glad I think what I do when I'm reading stuff that I don't really want to read that I need to read is I try to just get it done really fast, which is why I was like, I'm going to read this thing in a weekend and then I will be done. So it was a struggle. I felt like a lot of it was just so boring. And then there were interesting parts of it, but a lot of it I was like, okay, this is not interesting. Also, why did he think that she was going to be creeped out by him being glittery? Like, he's so
I wrote the
paranoid.
same thing. Oh my gosh.
I have major issues with the freaked out by glitter because, like, what? So you went to the craft store and just like dumped some glitter herpes all over yourself and like went for it.
Well, he was like, oh, because I like basically that he freaked out when Carlisle first showed him what he looked like in the sun when he was a vampire, and then I'm like,
but Edward like literally doesn't even remember being human because he doesn't remember what they eat.
Yeah.
So I
remember
like,
when he slices pizza and then he talks about how he's gonna have to throw that up later, and I was like, this is disgusting. Why did you put that in there?
He could have just swallowed it, and that could have been the end of the story.
So
Find the line. What I wrote about.
like in the vampire. So I'm rewatching the Vampire Diaries right now, and the episode we watched last night. Damon is reading Twilight and makes jokes about it.
Amazing.
I know.
Yes.
I remember that. Why is Edward so into this Bella? Edward's so whipped. What's so special about this Bella girl?
Yeah.
You have to read the first book.
You have
first.
to read the first book. Yeah.
You have to read the first book first.
Yeah.
How come you don't glitter in the sun? Because I live in the real world where vampires burn in the sun. Like, yeah. Sorry, I literally wrote a paper about that for one of my classes.
It was pretty funny.
That's funny.
It was funny.
I like seeing different movies and how they interpret the whole like the myths and stuff, and like how they interpret, you know, what happens when they go out into the sun. And some people like nothing happens, and then some people like, you know, in True Blood where he burns, and then like other place I can't even remember the other ones. My brain's fried. But I just remember watching Moonlight from like 2005, and he went into the sun and he just was like, nah, the sun is not my friend. I'll literally boil. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Speaking of which, I found the post-it I wrote about this, about what you were saying about him glittering. I wrote pathetic, absolutely pathetic. He thought she'd be repulsed by the fact he sparkles like diamonds. Wow.
Well, it's sort of like Bella thinking that her being pale and thin is repulsive.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's very true. But I was just like, you sparkle like diamonds.
The whole part where he described what human skin looks like, I don't know. I was just kind of imagining those little wispy things in the Little Mermaid, you know, down in Ursula's thing. I was just imagining those.
The eels?
Yeah, no, the people that got turned into the little wispy thing. I was just imagining like people whisking around. I don't.
That's so funny.
Because
Oh my gosh, Vampires Suck. Yes, I remember that movie. Have any of you guys seen Vampires Suck?
No.
Yes, I watched it back in the day
No.
when the movies were coming out.
Actually, I feel like you would either detest it or like actually dig with it because it's like really making fun of it.
See, it's so crazy because it's like, I like vampire lore, but Stephenie Meyer just kind of, I don't know. I feel like she just screwed it up for everybody.
Yeah. What she did was she decided that all the myths that like are common knowledge, like the myths, general myths about vampires, like that they burn in the sun, the stuff about the coffins or whatever. She like decided that those are things that the Volturi decided to spread to like make humans like not know about them. And I was like, that's the most convenient.
The Volturi are interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, also, I feel like she had a lot of fun writing the car chase scene.
Oh, yes, she did. She said that.
Which I was like, I don't know. I don't really care about car chase scenes. So I thought it was I was like, really? They're just like magically finding these super expensive, hard to get, really fast cars in Phoenix.
Thank you. Make it make sense. I don't understand how they were hopping from one. I mean, like it's not like the Fast and Furious on
needle in her neck. How is she not remember that later? That someone crashed her car and got
Fast and Furious.
Beautiful man.
What Ashley?
It feels like she watched Fast and the Furious 1 through 8 and decided that she was going to take notes of what cars were in those movies, and she was going to place them on random parts in the city. And Edward and Alice were going to hop from one expensive car to the other. I said, you know what? I understand that you're trying to write action, but it did not make sense. How are you finding all of these expensive cars?
In Phoenix.
Phoenix now. We're not in LA. We're not in ATL. We're not in New York City. We're in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh my God. I mean,
And then there were all the murders.
Guys, it's dangerous. You're by the border. I mean, that's obviously the logic.
Listen.
Okay,
I'm
can we
telling
just
you
talk
all,
about
there's something
something
wrong
really
with
fast?
her.
yeah.
So you remember the time where he was talking about how he wanted to kill her and like talking about all the ways he was going to kill her? I was like, oh my God, just do it already. End this book, please.
For real though. Like, why?
Like, are you Macbeth right now? Because Lady Macbeth has to come out of nowhere and be like, do it.
Oh my God.
I'm right there with you because it was like kill her and save us all.
I had to use the audiobook to get through this book, even though I loved it. Like,
Yeah.
I still had to use the
I
audiobook.
audiobooked it.
Rachel said Fast and the Furious Sparkly Drift.
Oh, that is my new favorite thing ever.
That's good.
I gotta find a way. We gotta find a way to make a series about that.
Yeah.
Sparkly drifts.
That's hilarious.
Instead of Nas, it's blood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, question.
Yes.
How, because I was thinking about this time when, you know, the scene where he has to like suck the venom out of her. How exactly does that work? Because it keeps describing how every time he smells her blood,
drank with his lips puckered like she was drinking from a straw. That's literally what she has an explanation for that on her website. I looked at it. She also has an explanation on her website for how vampires how Bella was still able to get pregnant with Renesmee. Like she's got some.
But did she explain?
She's bored, bro.
She said he was like drinking with his lips puckered and like drinking from a straw, and I was like, what?
no, that is
Grandpa.
But it describes how like every time he smells her blood, venom releases in his mouth. So I'm like,
was that basically equating to drooling?
Also, did you get that from Twilight? There was that scene where they were talking about sex in Midnight Sun. I did not realize it's what they were talking. I thought they were talking about marriage in Twilight. Was I just like being dumb or
with what?
Speaking like how he's talking about, he was speaking of venom. He was saying that like how like when he's near her, there is that scene, you know, in the book where they're in her bedroom and they're just like talking, and she says, like, is marriage, like, is it the same thing as it is for like humans or whatever? And he was like, I imagine it's much the same or whatever. And they're just like skirting around. He's like skirting around the word sex because like she didn't say it. So that.
Oh yeah, that scene.
I mean,
yeah, like I didn't realize that's what they were talking about in Twilight. Like I thought it was. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really remember.
I know what you're talking about, and I think she was skirting around saying sex. Like she's not going to say that. Like that's against her like beliefs, obviously.
I mean, she said it in the book. Well, they do here, but she didn't in Twilight. So I was confused when I read this. I was like, wait, you're talking about sex this whole time? I thought you were talking about marriage because it.
Oh, I knew they were talking about.
Oh, sex. They were talking about sex. Yeah.
I mean, it was just like my my 9-year-old self, like
probably. I would. I mean, that's
okay. You were like 9 when you read it. Yeah, no, like clearly the subtext was that it was about sex. Yeah.
Yeah. Because probably like the 9-year-old part of me, like that was reading it, thought it was or talking about marriage and like it not being this, like it not being possible for them, like a human and a vampire. And like I was like, okay, that makes sense. Move on. But like,
oh yeah, no, I figured they were talking about having sex. Yeah, I figured.
Yeah. It was just risque for her to use the word sex.
Yeah, she uses.
What about that part where him and Tanya are talking, and he was talking about how he feels bad for refusing her, but she's like really like she's like wants to pounce on him, kind of a thing. Like, did anyone be like, why didn't of all the times that you could have like done the deed, like why didn't you just do it with Tanya and get it over with?
Because
he's a prude. Sorry, go ahead.
No, Bethany has a great theory.
I have a theory. I filmed a video about it, actually, that's going up soon. So my theory is that Edward and Bella are both demisexual. Everything makes so much more sense if they're demisexual. And I have like, so I just filmed a video that's going to go up where I explain like based on textual evidence in Midnight Sun, like why I think that could be true. Whether Stephenie Meyer agrees with me, I don't know. Maybe she just wants people to be prude, but like, I think it makes much more sense if they're demisexual.
I was on live yesterday.
I laughed. I think I told you about that line. I laughed out loud. I just like was on the floor laughing, and it wasn't even that funny. But it was, I think it was like 3 a.m. or something. But where he saves her from the car, which like also again like the amount of times Bella skirts death is just unreasonable. But how he said like I uttered a word I'd never used in front of a lady before. I was just like, what? Oh my god.
I'm just imagining the guy from Final Destination, you know, that one guy that plays his death. I just imagine him like trying to show up everywhere and being late because Edward's already saved her and being like, dude, this is how it's supposed to play out. If you've seen that movie, Final Destination, no?
Sorry.
Somebody will get it.
Ashley.
I only thought about what because I think did you tweet that?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so it didn't really cross my mind when you tweeted that. I read it, but I wasn't really thinking about it until I got to the part in the meadow or wherever they were. And he was like, he had other feelings, other human feelings, and he had never had them before. And then she also said when they were in her room, I've never had feelings like this before. And he was saying that lust and love
don't always
mutually they weren't always mutually exclusive. And she was like, well, for me they are.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I thought about your tweet again, I was like, oh, I said, now that makes sense. Now I don't know if Stephenie had the capability of looking past her own issues to create such a dynamic type of story in which both of her characters would identify as demisexual. But if she did, it would make the pieces of the puzzle work. It doesn't excuse his behavior, his crazy parts, but
problems.
But that connection that they have, it was like, oh, okay, now I can see that. I can see that whole thing. But do I think Stephenie's capable of making that connection? No. Do I think Bethany is? Yes.
Thank you.
Exactly. I 100% agree with you. When Bethany said that, I was like, oh, you're right.
Yeah.
But then I was like, Stephenie would never. She would never.
Yeah. So a lot of people in the comments are saying, yeah, in the text it fits. We're giving her too much credit. I mean, fair enough. We probably are. But I mean, I don't know, I feel like queer people have been reading themselves into texts forever. So why not have an entrance for doing that with the Twilight series, regardless of author intent?
True.
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, this is interesting. That says, does she maybe without knowing it identify demisexuality as the religious ideal? That's interesting. I mean, because I do think there's a lot that goes with demisexuality that does fit into religious ideals, which is something to consider. That's interesting. Yeah. Because otherwise, but I will say there's still stuff that's funny. Like, did you guys notice he was really uncomfortable with wearing a shirt that showed his arms when he went to the meadow with her? He's like, I never show this much of my body.
I was like,
I'm like right before that happens. I'm like almost in the middle point.
Okay.
I just
Spoilers, he hates his arms.
Sorry. He doesn't like
Right.
showing his arms.
but it was
I've
weird
read
to me
Twilight
because
before. It's not a spoiler.
it feels like, well, I know Bethany, like I said, I have to go back and watch the rest of your vlog. But I don't know if Bethany saw, I don't know if y'all saw it, just how much Stephenie Meyer inserted herself into this book. Because at the very beginning, 30 minutes into the book, we get these lines about Carlisle is either supposed to be representative of God or he is God, because
that was weird.
she makes the statement saying that he's from Edward's perspective, he's like all-knowing and he loves Edward despite any mistakes that he makes, and he'll always forgive him for his mistakes. And I'm like, and all he wants to do is he's compassionate. All he wants to do is save people. And I was like, I consider myself, it's just me, I consider myself a spiritual person, but I was like, wow, I don't know if people will see stuff like that, because it's almost like you have to read so in between the lines. And there was another section, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was almost like she was making a reference to Edward and the rest of the Cullens being like angels, and Carlisle being God and being able to resist temptation. But Carlisle didn't allow them to interact when it comes to like if someone gets injured or whatever the case may be, and they have to be in front of blood, they don't interact as much as he does, because he can't trust them enough to not fall into temptation. And I was like, so is this kind of like a fallen angel Lucifer type of thing that we got going on here? Because he really was pushing it.
So what's else is interesting that I do mention in the vlog is the whole story of when Edward goes off by himself and kills humans for a while. When he comes back, it reads so much like the prodigal son story in the Bible.
Yes.
Like, so there's a lot of like, I feel like people are saying in the comments, which is true, she's Mormon. But like, it's interesting. There's a lot of like biblical-ish puritanical stuff woven in, which is very interesting if you look at it that way.
So I always read the Cullens as like the Mormon ideal thing, like the family unit in which like you marry the man and like the whole family goes to heaven together. Like I'm like I've known a lot of Mormons, so I continue to get weird exposures where I'm like, huh, what? That doesn't match up with what everything else I know. So I don't know, like that's how I read it, I guess, when I saw that. But then you pointed that out, Ashley, and I was like, that's kind of creepy, even for me as like someone who is
made
not
so
religious.
Sense if he had just had Carlisle, like, I don't like what you're saying about God and whatnot. Like, it was really strange. I was just like wondering, like, why not just make like some of these vampires have like gifts, like Edward can read minds and whatnot. And I'm like, and there are some like lesser, like some like Jasper can influence emotions. Siobhan can kind of like sort of like has a way of making people like things kind of go her way. And like there are some that are more like intuition based. And I was like, why not just make it like Carlisle, someone who's just like whose gift is just to see the best in people, like without having to just like make him like God. Like, why would you do that? Like,
well, Isabella, he's like the literal white savior.
And that's where my problem comes in.
He's a doctor.
That's where my problem comes in, because I'm just like, listen, we're not going to get into this whole discussion about how the image of white God, white Jesus, blonde hair, blue eyed gets pushed on all of us. And I feel like Carlisle, blonde hair, not blue eyed, but damn it, if she could get away with it, he would have been. And it's like that whole imagery just did not sit right. But what's so ironic about that is that she creates that personality in Carlisle, and you can't help but like him. You can't help but have this connection. Because even I was reading, I was like, damn, I like Carlisle. Then I'm like, but are you trying to build this whole conversation about Carlisle is like God? He's forgiving. He's nice. You should love him. You should appreciate him, which, for me is conflicting, because I do, like I said, I don't ever say religious. I always say spiritual. So for me, it was a very conflicting experience to read this book, because it was like, I don't have the same beliefs as you. And I feel like you're pushing some things that I just can't get down with, because like Bethany said, it was like that white savior complex. And I was like, yeah, nah, not for me. Not for me.
Yeah. I was like laughing. Oh, we've got some feedback there. I don't know if you guys saw Rachel's comment. Where is it? I was like laughing at
this. She said, thank you,
yeah,
Carlisle. I said Rachel's out of control. Carlisle's good. I saw.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Yeah, it's an interesting. Mandy was saying, Carlisle was a preacher's son too, also.
Yes, he was.
So he's and that they have that like big cross in their house, like the big wooden cross from like the church that his dad preached in. It's interesting.
But his
Even with
turning
that-
was also very traumatic as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense how he would internalize that. The only other the thing that I personally liked about Carlisle, like I've always liked Carlisle, even though, you know, there are those aspects of that. But the thing that I liked the most was when Edward mentions, like a couple years after he's been turned, and Carlisle arranged like for a tree and popcorn and stuff to decorate the Christmas tree. And I was
Yes.
I was sitting there like half in tears. I was like, not
That
today.
was
I'm not
cute.
gonna be crying.
That was
But like
cute.
it was very touching.
I was in the grocery store and I was like, you're such a sweet person.
Yeah.
If I think about you outside of Stephenie, oh my goodness, you're such a sweet man.
It's very true.
Oh, someone mentioned Rosalie.
That's
That's
interesting.
interesting. She also said that like Rosalie is like her least favorite character, Stephenie Meyer's, which I find interesting because she says that she
does
agrees.
not shock me at all.
It doesn't shock me at all either.
No, it doesn't shock me, but I think it's interesting though because she says she agrees with Edward's. I mean, it's because she agrees with Edward's point of view about Rosalie and that she's like shallow and like however
I see Rosalie as a very dominant woman who takes control of what she wants and owns her sexuality. And Stephenie Meyer does not like that, which is so funny because you look at, I don't even look at it just in terms of physicality between Bella and Rosalie. For me, it's about dominance and personality and the confidence and the ability to own who you are as a person is what I get from, no matter how much she tries to write Rosalie, it always still comes off as Rosalie being this confident woman in herself and being confident about her sexuality and just owning everything about herself. She always will come off like that. And no matter how much Stephenie Meyer, and it's so crazy that happens, that even when an author is writing a character, sometimes the character still defines himself outside of the writer. Yeah. And Rosalie does that, and I feel like Stephenie Meyer doesn't like that because it's not what she's about. She's about that Bella concept, that subservience, that my man is the head of my household. What he wants is what I do. It's religion is very, very much so. The conservative, traditional religion is very much so tied into everything that she writes in that book.
Yeah, I agree. And like I thought, because I've always really liked Rosalie, and part of it was that, and that she was just very blunt, and like it was just Edward, just because he's Edward, has had a problem, like was always like it seemed like the Cullen he didn't like he had the least amount of like a connection to, but well, besides maybe Jasper, but that's different. But there was that line where he was talking about how like maybe she would have been a happier person like if she weren't so beautiful in her human life, and like she like blah 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 blah. And I was like, wait a minute, is Stephenie Meyer really trying to make us think that like that's part of the reason that Rosalie's human life ended was because she was so pretty and so vain that like she came across this like Royce dude who she realized later that didn't really love her and she didn't really love him back, but like he just liked her because she was pretty or whatever. And I was like, are you really trying to like make someone who was
like victim
raped,
blame
and also someone who was raped, like gang raped, like feel like that just like really rubbed me the wrong way.
Well,
I feel like that. I feel like the reference to her beauty and everything, I feel like that's a reference to something else too, but I just can't place it right now.
Yeah.
I thought I liked Rosalie, and this book made me not like Rosalie ever again. I feel like, well, that and the last book, Breaking Dawn, also made me not like her because of her pure like
she's kind of a
Bella stance. It was quite awful for me.
I feel like Stephenie Meyer has this very particular view of what women should be like, and I mean, I even noticed, like in Edward deciding that Angela is the one human girl that he thinks is worthwhile, part of the reason is because she's maternal with her younger brothers. And so she has this very specific, obviously there's nothing wrong with being maternal, but like the idea that like, the right way to be feminine or the right way to be a woman is to be maternal, is to be like subservient, is to not think highly of yourself. Like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of that kind of comes through.
Yeah. And almost through Esme a little bit as well.
Oh, wow. Sorry. Somebody commented, Autumn said that from articles she's found, the Volturi have been references to people who are Catholic, possibly.
That's crazy.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So Rachel
It
asked,
makes sense, though.
if the story is has religious undertones, what or whom is being represented by the Volturi? I
commented maybe like Lucifer or like Michael the Archangel.
I could see.
I don't know a lot about like religious stories, but
yeah, I mean, I think
the
idea that they're the
Catholic.
Catholic, like I think the idea that they're the Catholic Church is an interesting one, but I don't know, like that's interesting.
But I wonder if the Volturi and Edward and the Cullens are the two groups of angels that we're looking at, because in my eyes, I could see it as the Cullens are the angels that are still attached to God, whereas the Volturi, even though they come from the same group, the Volturi are the fallen angels. You get what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Or could it be that like the Cullens are supposed to be like Joseph Smith that made the Mormon religion, and the Volturi are like whatever. Catholic, Protestant.
I mean, that makes sense too, because they also have like a political structure and rules that govern people, like that would make sense to me, actually. That's really interesting. People seem to be agreeing with that. The Volturi is the Catholic Church. I do think that's interesting.
How do you guys see the other vampires who aren't the Volturi, but who, like Peter and Charlotte, the other vampires who aren't the Volturi but still live the way that they do, and like just drinking human blood, really?
Yeah.
Like, do you think she's trying to put those
that's interesting, I guess, because like the Catholic Church believes in transubstantiation, that like in communion it actually becomes the body and blood of Christ.
Yeah. So
like that could be kind of a thing. That's interesting. We're getting deep tonight.
Oh boy.
With Twilight. Somebody was asking in the comments something about like, okay, like then why is Bella always wanting sex from Edward if she thinks that's super bad? Which, I mean, could come back to this whole thing of like, because I do think, I don't know if this is Mormon church, but at least some of them very much focus on the sin of Eve as like a temptress.
Because Eve forced that apple down Adam's throat.
You know.
Oh my God.
just let me mute myself so I can I'm gonna mute myself for a second.
But yeah,
she's not even laughing at herself. We're over here laughing at her.
Because I've been to too many churches that use that as a gateway to treat women as the lesser.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And it just grates my nerves. It's like, oh, well, she's the temptress. She's trying to seduce you. And I'm like, are we being serious right now? Because I mean, really though, are we gonna? And it's really set up like that. I feel like this whole series is set up where she is playing into that narrative, because she's this temptress. She wants this physical relationship, and we must resist temptation. We can't give in to temptation. I'm like, all right. Well, whatever makes your boat float.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, and then reading from Edward's perspective too, about like his reaction to the very boring sounding clothes that Bella wears, that are like as if it can be super sensual to be wearing like a slightly form-fitting but not tight turtleneck.
He's like, I miss the baggy sweater. Like,
I wish she would still wear that baggy sweater that looks so bad on her, because this turtleneck is just too much.
And the amount of times that he said that her hair was beautiful, it's like, her hair is brown. We get it. It's pretty. Not really, because like the way that he describes the hair so many times, it's like, oh my goodness. At this point, you might as well be like creepy Thin Man and cut some of it off and take it home.
He would have if he could have gotten away with it.
He could have gotten away
But then he wouldn't have long hair anymore. He has this obsession with having long hair.
Izzy, your comments.
He doesn't. Come on. You cannot tell me that you think Edward can do that. There is no way.
He can't. He can't. Because every pore in my body dried up every time I had to read anything from Edward's perspective.
And he would not come near you with his mouth in any capacity or his junk because he's too prudish. We know this.
Well, I mean, they played Edward in Breaking Dawn, right? I mean,
that's a lie. She was selling a lie. Ain't no way he was flipping. We're gonna go right back to this conversation that we had last time. There is no way that Edward was flipping and throwing and breaking headboards.
And he did not know how to break a back.
I don't like to show my arms. What headboards are you breaking?
Well, it was destroyed not one, but 2 rooms. There was like the blue room and the white room, and they like started off in the white room or something, and then he like destroyed that one. So then they went in the other room, and then like he destroyed that one too, and like I was just like,
well,
that's Stephenie Meyer that's Stephenie Meyer working.
The amount of times that he pictured her dead.
He's a necrophiliac. Oh my god, guys.
Who said it? He's
a necrophiliac.
Yes, he is.
Holy crap, it just clicked. Oh no. Oh no. I need more tequila.
Oh yeah, somebody's saying Bella's collarbone really got him going. That's true. He keeps mentioning like, ooh, her collarbone.
Y'all, I'm convinced that the scenes that happened in Breaking Dawn was Stephenie Meyer. And I don't know her. I don't know her personal business. But I feel like she was trying to live out her life vicariously, wishing and hoping that her husband was breaking their headboard. Because I don't understand how you go from, please, no arms. We're not doing this. We're going to sit next to each other. We're going to put 2 teenagers in a bed together and they're just going to lay there and nobody's going to do anything. And then when they get married, they're going to have bedboard breaking sex. That is a lie. Stephenie Meyer is living a lie. She wanted her husband to read these books so he could take notes. I respect
that. But that is also exactly the type of rhetoric that I was hearing as a teenager in evangelical churches with like the purity movement. That was kind of it. I mean, they wouldn't literally say break a bedboard, but it was basically this thing of like, look, keep the door open, stay apart from each other, but like when you get married, it's on and it's all going to be like this mind-blowing, amazing thing right away, which I'm like, well, okay. But I mean, that was the rhetoric. That was like how teenagers were talked to. And I imagine it was probably not that different. I don't know.
I'm just imagining. I know someone when my husband was in the military and he was in basic training. We met a bunch of Mormons, and one of them was engaged, and they told us that they couldn't wait to get married to have kinky sex. And I was like, "But how do you know? How do you know? You haven't.
How do you know what you want to do? You don't.
You don't.
Well, here's the thing.
Like, that's all I'm thinking of is like, we're going to have some headboard breaking doing it in this house, and you've never done it? No, absolutely not happening.
And I mean, the thing is like, I don't think there's anything wrong with waiting. Like, we took a more conservative approach to stuff, but like but I think the expectations that are being set is so problematic. And like, because it's just not the sort of thing that just, I don't know, you don't figure it all out right away or know what you want.
I said that I've said that a couple of times, that there's nothing wrong. I don't ever want to send a message that there's something wrong. There's nothing wrong with waiting.
Yeah.
I understand why people want to wait. But like you said, creating this visual that all of a sudden you wait, you do no exploration of self. You do no exploration of sex at all.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to stick 2 people in a room who literally do not know what they're doing. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, we're just breaking headboards and tearing up sheets.
Yeah.
Girl, what?
No way.
No.
It's impossible.
Listen, I can't believe that she even wrote this. She had the audacity to write a scene where the first time, supposedly, that they both had sex, Edward was breaking a headboard. Now we all know.
I wish they would like. I think like, I mean, like it's. I feel like do what you want to do is like what I always think. Like if you want to wait till marriage, that's fine. If you want to have lots of sex, like that's fine. But like, at least like if I were to have children, like I haven't made that decision yet, but like I feel like I wish like if I were in that position to be teaching people about that, I would be teaching about like saying if you want to wait till marriage, that's fine. Like that's great, that's awesome. But I'd say like just wait for someone who respects you. Is like
exactly
like
and he doesn't respect her, so I don't know why she gave it to him
I
either.
feel like Edward almost doesn't even respect her. Which is
well, and I think the problem too is like, and I've seen this go in two different ways, like on like where things get messy is like on the one hand you can have this really extreme approach, which is like more of probably what I got growing up, which is like maybe you just shouldn't even kiss each other because if you I mean like I was literally told like if you kiss you're going to end up having sex. Like that was basically the messaging. Mm-hmm. And like it wasn't until I was in my like I was much later in life where I was like, that's not true. You can stop yourself. I'm like, you don't just magically go from kissing to falling into bed. You make choices along the way. And like, I was like,
no, you don't make choices.
No, as soon as you kiss, all of a sudden all your clothes just magically fall off.
Yeah.
Doesn't that happen to everybody?
But then, like, the other thing I have seen happen is where people idolize like male-female intercourse and then think it's fun, think like, oh, well, let's just do everything but that and say we haven't had sex because we're not going to worry about what queer sex is. It's not sex if it's not.
Or like the loophole, the back door.
Exactly, which is just like it's ridiculous.
I'm screaming.
Sorry. It's true though. Like we all knew the girl that thought there was a loophole, and you're like,
it's true. Okay. People do say that.
No,
like, I mean, well, technically,
idolize
virgin
constructs.
It's awesome, Saucy.
He's got a point though.
But really, she probably would have had a better experience in her first time doing it herself.
Yeah, there's people in the comments like Mara from Books Like Woe says there were so many everything but people I grew up with still technically virgins. Like, sorry, but you were not actually a virgin.
You're not actually.
Well, and it's just a construct put in by society. Like, oh man.
Yeah. So it's
really
God's
y'all gotta go listen to that song. By
Live.
Oh no.
I'll send it to you guys later.
I'm traumatized.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and like what Mara's saying about like virginity being a construct is like, and she also just like plays into it so much because, you know, like with Tanya and her sisters, like not Carmen, but like Kate and in Arena, like they talked about, I feel like they hinted at in this book how like they had lots of human lovers and like how it end well because they were human, and like I was like, what's wrong with them having like just because. Like she just like legitimately like she placed it in a way that she could justify villainizing the fact that they had lots of sex.
Yeah,
and I was just
of course. There's consequences.
I was like, I'm like, this lady has 4 children, I think too. So like,
but it was even when they went out to the restaurant, and Edward was saying there was maybe like 2 waitresses that they were dealing with. And one came back and he was like, her thoughts were so vulgar. I said, well, God forbid the woman wants to screw you. And that's so vulgar. Like, I wasn't just such a prude.
How he uttered a word I never uttered
so offended
before.
I don't want to, I couldn't, I just her thoughts were just so vulgar. And I was like, okay, but at the end of the day, you know that you're attractive. Natural human thoughts, you're going to look at somebody and be like, I mean, if I had the chance, would I or would I not? Probably I would. But it's like, it's so interesting that she uses that opportunity to insert her thoughts about lust and how lusting after someone is wrong and it's vulgar. And I'm like, goodness gracious, woman, like, I don't know. I would be interested to sit down and talk to her about her life.
Like the amount of times where he listened into Mike's thoughts, and Mike was constantly thinking vulgar thoughts about Bella and how angry it made him.
Boys probably
he hated Edward too. So
that, yeah, well, it was kind of mutual. And so, like, I don't know, I just thought that was kind of I thought that was kind of weird too, because it was like Mike is thinking all these thoughts, and Edward is just hanging out in his mind, just watching the TV and watching it all unfold. And it's just like, you could have done anything at any time.
Yeah. Like, I do wonder though, like, if I could read people's minds, like, I wonder, like, I don't think I'd be able to have the same type of connections with people that people who can't read minds could. Like, that's the what, like, if I were to give him one thing, like, I'm like, I don't think I would be able to, like, because if you can hear what everyone's thinking, you know, like, when people are lying, when they're being nice to you, just to be nice to you, even though they don't really like you. Like, I feel like I wouldn't be able to have relationships in general. Like, if I had that power and I couldn't block, like, I couldn't stop it from being in motion. And like, I think that that's really why he was attracted to Bella, is because, you know, she's the only, and I'm like, she has the same, like, we know from Twilight, she has the same thoughts that of Jessica, he says her mind is unoriginal. He says this person's one is like all like woo woo or whatever. And I'm like, Bella has those same thoughts. He just can't hear them. And
yeah, she's just as like petty and insecure as all the other human teenage girls. He just can't hear it.
And Bella's really insecure herself too.
But you know what Bella said about the whole situation and him reading the thoughts and in my opinion, villainizing a lot of those other teens that Bella is around, is that it will later become justification for Bella being isolated from them. And that does not sit well with me, because it seems like I said, a lot of the stuff, she's had 10 years to read about a lot of criticism that has happened, that people feel towards these books. And the fact that it turned into villainizing, first of all, teens are teens. Yeah. Okay. They're going to function like that because developmentally that's where they are. And to kind of villainize them for going through their natural process of being teens, it felt like it was her justification to isolate Bella from the rest of them, to build this, to justify the relationship between Bella and Edward. And that was one of the things that bothered me so much about this. And that was one of the things that I had talked about in my review about how that is a sign of abuse, of being in an abusive relationship, is when your partner begins to isolate you like that. And I feel like this was her excuse for that isolation, which it bothered me a lot. And I mean, I could be taking that personally.
No, I agree.
For some parts, it was like it was a justification for the abusive behavior that was present throughout the original.
No, I agree. And also there's that stuff like in Breaking Dawn about how they're like so surprised that she has like all this self-control that like newborn vampires don't have. And it's like, because she was so exposed, so isolated to that one person, to that group, to that family, that's all she knew. And that's kind of how she was sort of predisposed to be able to, I guess, not be the like traditional like newborn vampire. And also just like Charlie too, like didn't he say like in Eclipse that like one of the reasons he grounded her was like just to get her to get some distance, because she wasn't connecting with her other friends, and she used to have other friends other than Edward and like or any of the other Cullens. And I mean, like,
yeah. Can we talk about the epilogue, because I freaking hated the epilogue?
So long.
Well, it wasn't just that, but it pissed me off so much because he like forces her to go to prom, and he's literally imagining in his head like, oh, one day I think Bella will have kids and they'll ask her this question and she'll say, yeah, I was forced to go, but I'm glad I did at the end of the day. And I'm like, wait, so you're imagining she's going to be happy you're forcing her to go instead of asking her if she wants to go and accepting that she knows best for herself? Not to mention, when she freaks out, he locks the car door. Did you notice that? Like, he locks the car door so she can't get out, and is like, I just, like, that whole thing pissed me off so much. Like, what? She should have just left it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it in Twilight when she got forced to go to the prom dance thing, whatever, in the first place, because I'm not a big fan of like forcing people to attend like life events because you think that they're like important, because they're not. They're like not. I didn't go to prom. I really don't care.
Yeah. Like, why is prom the quintessential human experience to him? Like, why? Also, like, I went to prom 4 times in high school, and one of the times I did not like, and I was not drunk. I hadn't been drinking. I literally took a nap because I was bored. Like, I sat in a chair and I didn't go to prom. And like, it's gonna be said, "Oh, it's time to get up. It's time to leave. The museum's closing." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like,
why would you go 4 times?
Why did I go to prom 4 times?
Yeah, why did you go to prom 4 times?
The show.
I'm sorry. My prom was.
I mean, I went to a high school where like everyone, like, prom was like a whole thing for the upper school, but it was also like the juniors kind of like the juniors planned prom. They kind of like put it on for the seniors, so it's kind of like a thing where like everyone goes. Like, but
so it's not really prom. It's like just like a dance.
But it was like, it. Like, if it was, I mean, I hate it. It was like just an absurd budget. Like, and also the one where I fell asleep. Sorry, Ashley. Sorry, not Ashley.
I wasn't talking.
So tired.
Oh no, for me it was like it was juniors and seniors only unless you were asked, and you were like, if you were a freshman or a sophomore, you couldn't go. You could go to like Grand March and watch people like, you know, do the thing, but like other than that, you couldn't go. So that's why I'm just confused why you would want to go 4 times.
Yeah, I don't know. Ours was seniors only, unless you were asked as a date. So
yeah, I mean, the only thing was like it's mainly because like it was like a student thing that this was heavily enforced, but it was like really heavily enforced that only the senior girls were allowed to wear long dresses, like, and like they would legitimately like yell at underclassmen that were like that were like not wearing short dresses. It was like, I mean, it was a horrible school. Like it was the North Shore. It was really bad. And like, that's why like I went because like it was a thing where like everyone goes, and like the year I went, I thought it would be fun because it was at the Museum of Modern Contemporary Art, and we got to look at the pop art exhibit. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like I wanted to go see that exhibit anyway, so I'll just go. But I ended up falling asleep. Like I'm just
laughing because you fell asleep. Like, it's just so funny. Like, it's
yeah. I was just also because they wouldn't let you take off your shoes.
People are asking about an odd school. You went to like a private school, right? It was like a fancy private school, right? Because people are asking like, what kind of school is this? I was like it was, right?
It's the school in the same town that Mean Girls is based off of. I hated it so much.
Yeah, I went to high school in the hood. So
South Georgia or South Atlanta and South Chicago for me for high school. So
my high school was in a town with 300 people.
Oh,
and I went with the homecoming king. And the only reason why me and him even went was because I asked him to go as a friend, and he was like, he was a farm kid, so he was like, well, I mean, if I can go, I guess I'll go. And obviously his mom heard, and she made him go. And it was like a week before that, and this little freshman girl asked him out right in front of me, and he's like, nah, I'm actually going with Michelle. And then everybody was just like hating on me, and I was like, I just asked him to go as friends, just leave me alone.
Yeah,
I was a punk rock skater girl in high school. I was like, I'm out. I don't do these things.
I spent all my time in the library. Like, I was like really good friends with the librarian that like she would bring me books back. Like when she went to like her conferences, like I didn't like the people. I mean, like if you've read The Hate You Give, it's really like the school in that book. With just like the people who are super insensitive. Like there was this, like when they're hiring a diversity director, and I as an alum, I went to like the like interviews that they were doing, sort of like roundtable talks with the candidates, and this one horrible parent was like, how is you being here gonna like not make my white child feel singled out, uncomfortable. Like that's the kind of people that were there. And it just like, and it's almost like if you went to things and like just like stayed in the background, you just like fit in better than if you didn't go at all.
I went to prom, but like, I mean, what?
Rachel.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying, total fail on her part. They didn't break the car. They weren't doing it right.
It doesn't count, guys.
Doesn't count. You didn't break the car. You have to break something when you bang, otherwise it doesn't count.
Yeah. No, I went to prom, but I ended up asking a guy I had a crush on because I kept dropping hints and like he like didn't respond. And my parents were finally like, call him and ask him or we're going to do it for you. We're tired of you bugging us about it. So I made me call and ask him to prom.
I mean, but I bet, did you guys were your homecoming dances formal though?
Yeah.
Semi.
What you said, homecoming dances?
Yeah, were your homecoming dances?
Let me repeat my statement. I went to high school in the hood.
So I just our homecoming wasn't formal. Like they had a theme. Like one time it was like, oh my god, one time it was Hawaiian, and one time it was denim. One time it was like galaxy. Like,
we didn't have homecoming dances.
You didn't.
We had metal detectors at school functions.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
there were very few by far.
I went to high school in Hillsborough, which is like a kind of rural suburb of Portland. We had lots of dances. We had homecoming and winter formal and spring formal, and then the seniors had prom.
Yeah, we just had Chicago had homecoming and prom. When I moved to Georgia, I don't think they had homecoming. I don't know. I was a junior. I did not give a shit anymore. I was like, get me the fuck out of high school at that point.
Okay.
So.
Wait, Izzy, what school did you go to since you were from Chicago?
Plainfield. Yeah.
I literally only went to homecoming because it was what everybody else was doing.
Yeah, same. That's the reason I went to
prom. It was something to do with 300 people in the town, okay? And
there's
like
100%.
6 other rural towns went to the same school. So not a whole lot going on.
Homecoming. So, you know, my parents were real thrilled.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like my life was really good. Like even with prom, when I did go, like a group of like after prom, we went like with a group of friends, guys' house and played Risk all night.
That's precious.
So,
not Mara talking about they had to call dances function.
I wish
oh man.
Yeah.
Wow.
His memory was taken in that one. So like that's why I'm confused why Edward is just like with like just not only just like forcing someone to go to something that they don't want to do, like when you have like he had absolutely no right. And like in this book, they actually talk a lot. Like we see the conversations they have. He knows that's something she would hate. And yet he makes her do it anyway. Like tricks her into doing it anyway.
Well, it's
like
because he has all these ideas of what she should do and what her life should be like, and he's super controlling and manipulative, and I kind of hate him. This did not make me like Edward any more than I did previously.
The fact that he called himself, he said, "I'm no better than a peeping Tom." And then proceeds to open window. Well, and
then he says stuff like, "I'm a stalker. I'm a vampire stalker," and I was like,
"No, but it's okay. It's okay. He killed a spider in her room, so it's all okay."
And he put a blanket on her. It's fine. It was all well intentioned. You wouldn't scream if you woke up and he's standing in the corner.
I mean, it's like as if somehow saying what's wrong with his behavior makes it okay without addressing it. Like, I feel like that was her approach to this. Like, I'm going to have him say, "I'm being a stalker." And now that we've acknowledged it, we can ignore it.
Bethany, that's what I'm saying. She literally read criticism after criticism after criticism of this of her works. And she tries to use Midnight Sun to justify everything that people have said, like Edward was a stalker. So Edward now is going to say, "I'm a stalker and a peeping Tom." And then continues with his behavior. Edward said that stuff with his whole chest, y'all.
He's like, "Let me tell you what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do exactly that."
Exact. His
Well,
whole test.
can we just cycle to the part where Bella like is in the discovery part of finding out things about like Edward and what he is, and the whole like the wolf thing, and like how they just make like in the first part of the book they just make Jacob look like an absolute bumbling idiot. Like, am I the only one that was like, why did you do that?
Do what?
Edward Ed game and like
Just make him look like Stephenie Meyer just makes him look really stupid, like because Edward is kind of rifling through the like the memory or whatever out of somebody's mind, and it just makes Jacob look really stupid. And I didn't understand why she had to do that, which I do understand, but I don't understand from like, you've had 10 years to write this, so why did you have to do that? And then I kind of scrolled ahead a little bit and I saw the part where Carlisle warns Billy that they're coming back, and like I find that so like you see so much more of the protective part of the Black family, and where like it was when they intersect and you see we see Billy, and Billy is like freaking out because Edward is there and he wants to like warn his friend and his friend's daughter, and he's just like, why is he here? I'm at page 326, so this is about as far as I've gotten. But
there was a line that bothered me in that whole interaction with Edward and the Black family. And Edward it was after Bella had met with Jacob, and Jacob technically broke the treaty, which of course he wasn't really aware of anything. And Edward had made the comment that he felt justified in slaughtering the entire.
That was so bad. I was so angry.
That line, and I felt like, because I had said it on Instagram, and I said, I'm not an Own Voices reviewer, and I don't know if I was reading too much into that, but it really bothered me that she felt comfortable allowing Edward as a white character to say that he now felt justified. And she used the word slaughter. And I was like, that when I heard it, I had to rewind it. And I played it a couple times. I was like, I'm not hearing this right. Maybe, because I was doing something else at the same time. I'm like, no, I'm hearing this wrong. And the fact that she allowed Edward to say like, oh yeah, because he broke the treaty, I'm not thinking twice now about going and slaughtering the entire community on the coast. And I'm like, you had 10 years and you still can't get this right. You still can't think about the fact that if you wanted to rewrite this, I feel like she should have left anything in reference to them. She could have really just left it out as much as
left it out. Absolutely. Like, I completely agree with that.
She could have left it out because it wasn't necessary. And I don't know. And that to me is why I keep saying to people that, for me personally, and I always tell people as a librarian, I can't censor. It's not within my soul to censor stuff. But for me personally, I can't separate the art from the artist in this instance, in these books, because she put so much of herself into it that you can't. They are one and the same to me. And the fact that she had 10 years and she still nobody, and it pissed me off because it felt like nobody in the editing process caught that line and thought like, you know what? You already have a reputation for how you are treating Indigenous groups. You probably shouldn't include this. Like, nobody caught that line and said, we should probably take this out.
And it was so graphic too. It was just the fact that it was so graphic.
The imagery.
And then there was a line in the very beginning where Edward said, well, I don't eat like a savage. And I was like, why? Why? You could have just left that out completely.
Could have left it out.
And then there was another line where he talks about how in any other instance, in any other circumstance, he thinks that he would have been like friends with Jacob. I'm like, where do you see that you could have possibly been friends if this is how you regard Jacob and the rest of the tribe and the rest of the clan? Like, how is it you think like, oh yeah, we'd definitely be friends? You're thinking on a totally different wavelength here.
Yeah, like I remember exactly where I was because I was at that point I was listening to it like in my car, and I was driving by the animal shelter, and I like slammed on the brakes a little bit. Like it really caught me off guard. And like someone just like honking at me, and I was just like, oh, sorry, but like it just I feel like just in general, like, and because I work with a lot of editors at work, and just it just feels like. And the editors that I work with, like they really work with their authors on their books. Like they work on trimming it down. They work on, eliminating about like with sensitivity readers. It's like obviously no sensitivity readers were used in this entire series whatsoever. But it's also it felt like it wasn't edited, like almost like there was no editor.
Well, because it's such a huge moneymaker, and they probably didn't want to step on her toes. I mean, she sold 1 million copies in the first week. Like,
she did.
But
see, that's what pushes me the wrong way, and that's what makes me upset. And I can only say but so much from my perspective, but that's what drives me up the wall is that money in this situation was clearly more important than what would reinforce harmful things that had been done in the previous series. And it drove me crazy because even when I had put it in my vlog, I was like, I had said before, she got away with what she got away with that first series, because we're talking like mid to early, mid late 2000s, within the decade, 2000, 2010. Yeah. It was easy because nobody was checking for stuff like that.
Is about to die, so ignore
but
that.
2020, it's 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And you still are telling me that it was appropriate. Like everybody was like, oh, well, she's going to make us money. And that to me was very disheartening, thinking about the publishing industry as a whole, that money took precedence over having any respect for any native voices when it came to this book. Because I'm thinking like 10 years later, you shouldn't be making comments like that. You shouldn't feel like that was okay. No editor should have let that, because all they had to say was, you're gonna make us money, take this line out. But it was just like, who cares who we disrespect? Who cares who gets upset? Who cares who it harms? Because she's gonna sell 1 million copies in the first week. And that's why I keep saying, like, nostalgia for me is not enough, because there is no separating her from these books, because this is what she believed. This is who she is. And I'm convinced of that. I don't know her, but to see how much she's inserted herself and the comments that she makes, this is sorry, Bethany, this is crap that she truly believes. And that makes me have a problem with her personally, because she didn't remove herself from it at all.
And I also will say that, like, Little Brown, like, I think I said this during one of the other lives, but that I feel like just Hachette in general, like, I mean, just as a bookseller, like, there was earlier this year, there was a walkout, assistants, editors, just people who worked at Hachette, which I know people are asking about Hachette. It's one of the big 5 publishers. So it's like one of the biggest publishers, that there is. And because they're publishing decided to publish Woody Allen's memoir. Now, Woody Allen, like, I mean, I don't want to get into the things that Woody Allen did in it.
Publisher that's doing that.
Yeah, they decided to publish his memoir. And they're also the same people who published his son, Ronan Farrow. And Ronan Farrow, like, they're estranged because Woody Allen is such a horrible person, and like because of the things that he did his own daughter, to Ronan's sister. Like, that's why he changed his last name to his mother's last name. Like, they published his book about, sort of about how he like wrote the story that exposed Weinstein. And then they went and decided that, we'll just we'll purchase and publish Woody Allen's memoir. And they thought that was okay, and that people were gonna just like be like, okay, that's fine. Like, I don't know. Like, I wonder if like there's in particular also just like that, like not just obviously Stephenie Meyer herself, but like also if there's also some hinky stuff going on in that particular publishing house.
It's all, and I'm saying this as a Black person, as a person of color. It is all the publishing houses, and I have worked with some of them, and it's a very tricky situation to work with them, but also know that they don't always have the best practices. Because I even go back to Macmillan. Macmillan was an issue this year for libraries when they placed that embargo, and they were telling us that libraries were the reason why they were losing money on their e-content, which is complete crap. Because I mean, let's be honest. What they were saying, what they did is they set up an embargo where we were only allowed to buy one e-copy of a book at full price, and then we weren't allowed to buy one copy one licensed copy. Meaning that if, let's say, I don't know, I don't think he writes under them, but just saying, like, let's say James Patterson came out with a new book, right? We were only allowed to buy one of his books. We could have 200-300 people waiting to use that one book, and we weren't allowed to buy another copy until 8 weeks later. It's all of them. The publishing industry is a problem. They are not friendly to people who are not in certain socioeconomic classes, who look a certain way. It's all of them. To me, it reinforced this whole idea that if it's gonna make people money, it doesn't matter who it hurts.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter at all. With Stephenie Meyer, it was about money. With Macmillan, it was libraries were able to give people copies of books. Now, it didn't even matter in that sense because we license ebooks. So I don't think people know that when you check out an ebook from a library, it only has but so many checkouts attached to it. Once people fly through those checkouts, like let's say 52 uses, we have to repurchase that license again. So we're continuously pushing money. And it just sucks to see that this whole series, even Midnight Sun, is a clear indication of how screwed up the publishing industry still is. And I think that people get so caught up in, and it's not a bad thing, but people look at things like the Own Voices movement, which is great. I love it. But people look at stuff like that as an end all be all and not think about the fact that there's so much work that still has to be done with all of the big five. I will come for all of the big five because they're all problematic in some way.
Yeah, I'm think it's also that I feel like the agencies as well, and just in general, because like I mean, someone who's like interning in the entertainment industry as well, it's like it's like every single person has to do their part, and they're just refusing to do so. Like it's insane to me. Like I can't believe that like Macmillan would like it's so horrible. And I mean, like I think like as an independent bookstore, like you work with different publishers but you work with like a specific person or two within that publishing house. Like you have a rep or whatever, and they're like you'll have a rep who's really great and really nice and like makes an effort to get to know the store and the people who work there and like what the people who come into your store, like what types of things they like to read. And then those are the ones that like you say, oh, that person's always really nice to us. But like it's different for everyone. And it doesn't include like the higher ups at the company who really make that company like what it is. Like when you think of like American Dirt and everything, like I literally had to break up a fight between two customers over American Dirt once. And like, it was just...
It's a tricky situation though, because with situations like this, for example, with Midnight Sun, we can sit here and discuss all the ways in which Midnight Sun can be problematic and how I, as an individual librarian, won't actively go out and recommend it to anyone. However, and I can only speak from my experience as a librarian, because we have this ethical code about accessibility, we will never stop someone from getting access to that book. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
The publishing industry puts a lot of people in tough places because, especially just in the instance of libraries where we can't deny access, so we can't stop working with them, even though they are problematic in a lot of different ways. I think Autumn just said, even with Indigenous voices being able to get ARC reviews, like ARCs of certain books. Why are we still prioritizing people who are not Own Voices reviewers for books that are written by Own Voices. It makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. And now they're starting to get a lot of crap about doing that. But I still see it. I still see people getting access to books, and it's like, if you read that book, you couldn't tell me what the heck it means, because it's not written for you. It's not for you to get. So
yeah.
I don't know. I think that this Midnight Sun just really shows the issues in the publishing industry, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's complicated with the review stuff too, because it's like, on the one hand, I mean, some of it is a problem of them just not looking for Own Voices reviewers because it takes work. But then the other side of it too is like, some of it is going to go to other people just because they also just want to get as much buzz about something as they can, get publicity. So like, I get sending it to a variety of people, like types of people, because you want to get word out. But like I think the way it had been done for a long time is a problem, because for some book, it depends on the book, but like some books are going to do better with Own Voices reviewers promoting them. Some it's like,
well, the thing with that is that, I mean, this is a really vague circumstance because it's still like, but in the last couple of months, the Indigenous reviewers have had a lot of problems with trying to get in contact with certain publishing companies to just actually get a email back to just be like, yes, you can have this book, or no, you can't have this book. Just to get like an answer back has been like so frustrating. And like Saga's been leaving us on read, and like there's a couple other places that have been leaving us on read. Like at least 4 or 5 of us would have to email the publisher or to email like a publicist or whatever, just to get like an answer back. And so like, I don't know, like I've heard that there were arcs of Midnight Sun that had gone out, but like I don't know any native reviewer that had gotten a single copy, because like we could have nipped that stuff in the bud. So like it's very systemic in the way that certain publishing companies just leave us on read altogether, and it's getting pretty ridiculous.
I think I think my thing
Sorry,
about
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Michelle. I get the whole buzz thing. I do understand that. But for me, it's when you have people who don't know how to review and critique based on writing, plot development, character development, whatever. I have seen too many arcs go out to people who have large followings to create a buzz, and their reviews are, I don't really care for this because I can't relate. Well, shit, it's not meant for you to relate to, because it wasn't written for you to get. I understand reading an Own Voices book and creating buzz, and you say you're critiquing the actual writing portion or the character development, but like culturally, just sitting on like it, I don't get it, so I'm gonna give it 2 stars. Like I feel like that does so much harm. And that's the balance that I don't get, is that, yes, you want to create the buzz. Yes, you want to give to a variety of people. Yes, you want to target those groups that have large audiences, but at what expense?
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like it does more harm than good if you have people leaving reviews, like with The Only Good Indians, when that happened. Like when I read that book, I knew a lot of stuff was going to go over my head, because I'm not an Indigenous person. I'm not going to build all of that context. Like when I read The Deep, that book was written for me. And there was a lot of connection that I was going to make as a Black person that I knew a lot of other reviewers, there was no way they were going to make those connections. So I went into The Only Good Indians knowing for a fact he's going to go into some things that I'm probably not going to understand. So if I have issues, any issues that I had with that book were based on the technical aspects, not the cultural aspects, because that book wasn't for me to understand. Yeah. But there are big people out there who are getting arcs of these books, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I didn't understand. Well, first of all, Google's free. It ain't gonna cost you nothing to open up a tab and do some research. So it's so twofold. And you're right, Bethany. It's so many components that go into it. It's just that I just feel like it's stuff like Midnight Sun like this that makes me look at the publishing industry sometimes, and I'm like, it's 2020 in the year of our great Lord. What are y'all doing? How can y'all still not get this right?
Also, actually,
it's too much.
I really like what you said during one of our other live shows about how, you know, kids should be able to like look out the window, but also look in the mirror. And it's like people who are like non-own voices reviewers, like who are like, there's just no excuse to be saying stuff like, oh, I didn't get it. But also you should still be making the effort to use your writing to look out the window, to be trying to understand other people's cultures and trying to understand perspectives that aren't your own. And if you stop at, oh, I didn't like this because I didn't get it, then you're not helping make a safer world, a more accepting world, because you're stopping yourself at I don't understand instead of trying to go the extra mile to understand why you don't understand. And
or taking 2 seconds to look at Own Voices reviews of a book and figure out the pieces. Like I watched Ashley's The Deep live to get those extra bits that I didn't get because I'm white. I don't know. I'm going to miss stuff. Like, same thing. Like, it's not that hard to seek out that extra review.
At all.
Yeah, and it was right after The Only Good Indians came out, and it started to get a little bit of buzz. Like, even now, if I see, like, one of my faves or, like, a larger creator mention that book, like, that they're going to read it, I like, my heart stops a little bit because I'm like, oh, no, because if they don't like it, and if they're like, oh, I didn't get it, then you're just hurting. Like, Stephen Graham Jones is very sweet. He is very articulate, and he has this mind that I would just like love to pick his brain sometimes. But like the way that he talks about horror and the way that he's like, I haven't seen like all the stories yet, so I want to create that. And so like to hear a like mostly white creators that will like, oh, well, I didn't get it because of this or blah, 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 or I just gave it 3 stars because it wasn't all horror or it wasn't all this. That's when I start to like, I just get heart palpitations because I'm like, you are hurting the author, you're hurting the people involved in this book because you don't get it.
Yeah. I think one thing, just to further complicate this conversation, that is worth thinking about, I think especially as reviewers and creators, is publicists are underpaid and overworked and usually have a lot on their plates, not a lot of time. They don't, like, publicists, most of them, until they're pretty high up, often don't get paid a full living wage for New York City, which is where a lot of publishers are based. So like that is a problem. And so one thing I've started trying to do when I get, because sometimes I'll get reached out to about reading Own Voices books. And so even though it takes me a little more time, like I'm trying to start when I can saying, hey, here's a list of booktubers or reviewers who are Own Voices who might be interested in the book you're talking about. Like, yeah, sure, I'd like to review it, but like, here are some other people. And like, when I've done that, the publicists are like, oh my God, thank you so much. This is amazing. Because they just don't have the time to go and find all of those people a lot of the time. So I think some of it is, you know, people who do have relationships with publicists, you know, helping to offer other people they can send stuff to and realize that like the layers of how things get done in publishing is so complicated, and like they don't, and the fact that people are underpaid means that it is a overly white industry, and they're working on trying to change that, but it's slow. And part of the problem is that they don't get paid very much. And so most of the people who are able to take those entry level jobs are people who have family money from other places, from family or from a spouse. And so minorities are underrepresented in publishing. So like, it's just a complicated ecosystem.
Yeah, that's what someone was saying, that I forget which author it was, but like this was the first time that like that part like really got to me, was that like, you know, generally in publishing, like you don't just start off as an editor or whatnot. You start at the very bottom of the ladder and you work your way up. But the very bottom of the ladder is extremely underpaid. You don't make a living wage. And so essentially you have to be able to afford to start at that bottom rung on the ladder. And so the people who are able to do that are people who have trust funds, or not even trust funds, but who have parents that
can pay their rent in New York City.
Parents who can help,
or a spouse who makes enough money that they can afford
parents who can get to buy them their groceries, or they can live at home. I mean, like, there's just so many things that go into. It's almost like being able to work in the publishing industry. And there's a lot of people who would love to work in the publishing industry who aren't able to, because working in the publishing industry is a privilege. Sort of that. And I don't mean like it's a privilege, like an honor, in like the sense that it's like an honor to be able to work in the publishing industry. That, like, I mean, I'm sure it's like, I mean, I'm sure there are people who feel that way, but I mean, it's like, you kind of almost have to have privilege in order to start.
Yeah. Because I mean, like, we live in New York, and like the cost of living here, it's one of the most expensive places to live, and starting salaries for people are like, I mean, like, you're going to be lucky if you're starting at $40,000 a year, which is like nothing in New York City. Like, usually it's more like 30 for like entry level positions. It's, like, people can't live on that usually.
Yeah, where I live, I mean, it's the same thing. Like, that 40 is like starting out here, and I'm outside Charlotte, like North Carolina, which is like a finance.
Oh, is that? I didn't know you were that close to me.
We're close. I don't know quite where you're at, but I know we're nearby.
We'll talk after.
Yeah. But yeah, like, that's starting here, and we have New York City transplants that have come here, and let me tell you, I hate them. Not really, but I kind of hate them sometimes, because they're like driving everything up, because they're like, it's so cheap. And I'm like, no, please stop. Like, I want other people to come live here.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's super, I mean, it's insanely expensive living out here. Like, like we have, because my husband's a professor, and so we have subsidized housing through the university, and it's still really expensive. And we pay, I mean, so we have a 2-bedroom apartment, and we pay half of market rate for the area, and it's still like $3,000 a month.
That's insane. My mortgage is way less than that.
What the hell, Bethany?
Yeah. But I know, like, New York is expensive.
Wow.
It just, yeah.
That's half of market rate.
I don't even live in the city, and my rent is like in New York, like in upstate
Our
New York.
monthly mortgage is like $500.
And so they drive up the rent like sky high on purpose. Like, I'm paying like $13.75 a month for my apartment, like, in college. It's
child. I don't know where y'all get that money from.
We don't. Like, it's just like, because they don't have enough on-campus housing, and the only place that really students can live is in college town. Like, and so then they purposefully just like every single one of them, they purposefully just like realtors, they just put it up as high as they possibly can. And like, it's just, and it's like, I can't imagine what they're doing in like what that looks like in like big cities. It's just, it's all just like,
yeah. So for all those people who are freaking out about how much that costs, now imagine somebody trying to get an entry-level position in publishing getting paid $30,000 a year.
Yep. My friend's little sister's in New York or Brooklyn living, and like, I was like, so does she live in a closet? Because I was like, there's no way. She's fresh out of college. Like, I was like, you live in a closet, right? Like,
well, like, I mean, it's normal. A lot of people who are not married, like we knew people where, they would have we knew somebody where they had a townhouse. It was technically 2 bedrooms, but they had 7 people living in it to split costs. So they had like turned a closet into a bedroom, and they turned like all these different things into bedrooms so that they could afford rent. So yeah, it's
wild.
And like, I'm planning on moving to Los Angeles, and I feel like that's also like, especially like the entertainment industry is also, I mean, I don't think it's as bad as publishing, but it's also one of those things where you get like, you start off as an assistant and you get paid really, really little. Like, and like, I feel like the only way you can like afford that is by if you can be in a place where you can have a handful of roommates, so that, like, as people who, if like you can have parental support, and or you're fortunate enough to be able to find, to be able to find roommates, and it just,
yeah. Yeah, so it's wild how different it is. Like Michelle, I saw your comment. It's amazing. Like 500 for rent. I just like, it's like, that's amazing.
But we have to pay extra, like, like drinking water and everything like that. But yeah, my husband is really lucky because he works as he's a metal recyclist, and so we have a metal recycling plant, and so he's really lucky to work there. And like it was like for like 3 months he was working like from a certain like company where you start out and then they make the decision if they want to hire you, so it's like a temporary thing, and then they decided to hire him on, so he's been there for like a year or so, like a year and a half. So yeah, a lot of people come here to South Dakota, like especially to Aberdeen. I don't know why it's always Aberdeen, but like especially to Aberdeen, and they're like, oh yeah, we came here from like Texas, or we came here from like Arizona, and they're there for like a certain amount of time, and then that's usually just so they can like save up money, and then they're like, okay, bye, and then they leave. Because it's like a nice place for people to like raise a family and things like that. It's boring here, but nice to raise a family, I guess.
Makes sense. That's interesting. Yeah, well, we were in Pittsburgh for 2 years, and there we had like a pretty large place for like $850 a month, which was insane because we had gone from, I don't know, we've mostly lived in expensive places. We started in like Los Angeles area, but New York just takes it to a whole another level. So yeah, but wow.
Like college is expensive, like everything is expensive, and like people just like capitalize off of it. It's just,
yeah.
Like also just like it's also, I mean, like it's like everything. There's so many people like who the publishing industry would be just, it would be a gift for them to have those people who are passionate about stories, about making sure that every child, that every person is able to find a book where they can see themselves in it at some point in their lives, and hopefully have it be a continuous thing. And there are people who are so passionate about that, but just will never be able to work in the publishing industry. And it's really sad. And it's like, you saw the whole thing with like #publishing paid me, and just like all of this stuff is just like,
yeah.
And then, I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah. So we have been going, we're at like an hour and 50.
I don't know any native publishing.
What? Sorry, somebody say something?
I said I don't know any natives that work in publishing. I wish it would.
Fingers crossed it happens sooner than later.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Man, the comments have just been going all night, man. Okay, so I figure we should wrap up around the 2-hour mark, which we're close to, probably.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts on like Midnight Sun, on the series? We're done.
I'm not done yet, so I don't have any.
Almost. Okay. What?
Yeah, like, I mean, I'll say that, like, obviously, like, as I've said, like, that, I mean, I don't like the series, and really, like, it's really I think it's also because I've kind of made it my own, in the sense that of it being the, you know, the excitement of going with your friends to do something, especially like when you're young, like doing something without your parents like that. And like, just, I don't know, there's something about it, but I've been very, very conscious with what I'm doing because I've read that. And I think everyone, I think Michelle can probably speak to it better, but for example, because like the Quileute tribe is specifically referenced and specifically exploited within this series, I donated to the Move to Higher Ground initiative, and I've been you know, talking about that on social media and saying, like, you're gonna read this book, and like, and I'm not innocent in this, because like I said, like I've enjoyed this series and I've had good memories of it, and I know that there are people who have not had that experience and who have not had the privilege, because I'm not indigenous, and so I can't speak to that representation, and I'm also not the person being hurt by it. And so it's my responsibility as someone who's picking up this book and who's talking about it to do what I can to ensure that we're highlighting we're highlighting the people who deserve to be highlighted. And I think Michelle can probably speak to it a lot more, but that's one thing that I was doing, was in donating to that particular initiative, though there are so many more.
Yeah, no, I would say there's a link in the video description for anybody watching for the Move to Higher Ground initiative, and I donated quite a bit as well, just with buying the book and talking about the series, because they don't see proceeds from the Twilight series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think my biggest thing was I was surprised that I don't know why it felt slightly, this is not a high bar, slightly better written overall. Slightly. Again, not a high bar.
Yeah.
But it was weirdly better written. But not, I mean, it was a 2-star read. Like, maybe a 1.5.
Frozen, or is that just me? Like, Ashley's moving, but...
You're frozen onto my screen.
Yeah, you're frozen on my screen too.
Okay, because like everyone except for Ashley is frozen on my screen.
Yeah, for me, you're the only one that's frozen.
Yeah, same. But yeah, that's my only takeaway. Is slightly better. I donated money, not for a pat on the back, but because it's the right thing to do, and I could.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
wondering, like, is there a way that like people could band together and make?
Oh, yeah.
Nope.
There
she goes. She cut out.
There she goes.
She was like, I'm out. But yeah, I was like, man, y'all, I'm mad that there's 2 more books, supposedly, honestly, at the end of the day. I'm just mad about that.
So what's the story behind that? She said that she's writing 2 more, or that there's 2
more?
She said
during her little live show was that she wants to write like so many like other things, like stuff that takes place in like other worlds, and like she doesn't like before then, but she's planning on 2 more books in the Twilight Saga universe, and they're not going to come out next year, the year after that, or the year after that, like years down the line, according to her. And they're going to be like in the future, like I'm guessing like after the events of Breaking Dawn, and I'm assuming it's probably going to be like a storyline. It's either going to be Jacob and Renesmee, or like some like narrative about like trying to like destroy the Volturi.
God, no.
No, Jacob.
That's not what she said. That's what I'm assuming is what she means when she says she doesn't want to be in the past anymore. She wants to like only write in the future or whatever.
Do you know
I
how many
eyes of the baby, and I said, "You are mine." No,
Izzy, you can be done. I'm probably done too. I'm
done.
If she came out with a short story collection about backstory, I might read it. But like, I think I'm done. Otherwise, like,
no, I'm done. I'm completely done. Like this is it.
Done.
This is. I'm finished.
One thing I was wondering is like, is there a way, like, because I was reading this interesting article about how because like Forks is a real town, and like they've had, and like back in the day, like they had these huge like Twilight festivals and got a lot of revenue from it. And they're talking about how like they're not doing so well now, and like they're hoping that the like release of this new book will help them like reignite the tourism and like the financial stuff in their town.
And like, guys.
But then there's also like the Quileute tribe. I'm like, if Forks, like, why can't, at the very least, like, I mean, I can't speak for whether or not the Quileute tribe, like, wants that attention. Like, I can't speak to that, but, like, I feel like if Forks is going to be able to capitalize off of that and make money off of this stuff, then, like, at the very least.
If you were a marginalized, like, being a marginalized tribe and then having a white Mormon lady come in and spin this whole web of what that tribe is, that's a big nope. Like,
yeah, I mean, I can imagine.
Like, I mean, there's been a couple, like for us, for natives, I think it's like definitely Dances with Wolves, that whole thing. So like after that, I'm just like, can y'all just please like stop putting natives in your stories or in your things? If you're not going to have like native reviewers, or if you're not going to have like accurate native representation, or if you are not going to have like people that are actually native in the movies and or books or whatever, like just stop. Just don't. Leave it alone. Don't touch it. That's just my thought though. Like, I think you just enough's enough.
Yeah, I think you got to be very, very mindful, and I can't, you got to be mindful of that white savior complex too that people will get. that's a very, very tricky thing to navigate when it comes to monetary compensation. Is that sometimes people like to do stuff like that, and then they get a superiority complex, and it doesn't really help anybody at all.
I wish they could see like some, like, I mean, I guess I hope that a lot of people have been donating to that particular initiative, that maybe, if anything, like maybe they're hopefully getting and seeing an influx of donations. Like, at the very least, I hope that, like, as people who are reading this book and discussing it, like, I hope that's something that at the very least, like, from my perspective, at least, I'm hoping that that's something that I've been able to do, is to encourage people to go to that site and to click like the donate now button, like, because I can't, like, there's not a lot I can do, but that's one thing that I can do.
I agree. I think too, the only thing that we can do is continue to hope that people are doing what I think is the right thing. And sometimes it can be kind of hard, because I mean, no, wrapping it with final thoughts, I think it was very frustrating for me to read this and kind of see the issues just, 10 years later, and the issue still persists. And, you still have some pretty big people out there with pretty large platforms and pretty large voices still talking about how awesome this book is and how it just fits and fulfills their nostalgia. And, you also have to be wary of people who say and do things just because they don't want the backlash that comes with them if they don't say or do things. And authenticity plays a big role into a lot of this. I feel like this whole situation with Midnight Sun is such a complex beast of its own. But I know for me personally, I've given this, I really don't like her. So I feel like I've given this insensitive human enough airtime as it is. She's gotten enough airtime out of me. I can't be here for the long haul when it comes to her, because I don't think she's a good person. I don't think she's a good human. And I don't have to know her personally to kind of identify that. I see that in that writing and how she treats people. And you would think 10 years later, after seeing so much criticism of your works, that you would do some self-reflection and you would kind of listen to people who are telling you, hey, this is really screwed up. Not, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, or I'm sorry, but, because that's how that whole book came across to me, is I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, or I'm sorry, but it's kind of like, oh, Edward is, a stalker, but here's the reason why.
It's totally
like,
okay.
I don't mesh with people who do stuff like that, who give those lame excuses and lame apologies because they don't want critical feedback and they don't want to do self-reflection. So no more. That's it.
Look, if you can drop JKR, she who shall not be named, with the quickness, I don't really understand why you can't do the same to Twilight to an extent, or see the criticisms.
Because people like to pick and choose. They like to pick and choose what they want to fit into their world at the moment. What makes them feel good in that moment. It's about self. That's what that is. If it doesn't hurt me, it doesn't matter. And that's where I always have an issue, is that people feel like, well, if it doesn't personally affect me, then who cares?
I mean, I think at the very least, like, you have to be willing to recognize the problems with something. Like, can you read something for nostalgia and get something out of it and still see the problems with it? Yeah, but like, you have to be willing to do that. And I think the problem comes with, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, it's so nostalgic, and they just like gloss over or ignore or don't address like the issues that exist. I mean, this series I did not like on a reread, but there are series that I have reread and still love, that I have nostalgia for, that I now see some issues with, and like, I can like hold those things in tension with each other. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like, I've tried my best to, like, as someone like who is more in that boat of like the nostalgia, like, I've tried my best, and like, it's not even just that I've tried my best, it's like, I know that there are problems, and I've been acknowledging them, that there are problems with it. And I feel like it's not like you can't, like, there's no excuse for anyone to read this book and not see that there are problems with it. Like, I just, like, I'm like, yes, and it's just, and like, I mean, like, I don't know how to describe it. And like, but it's like,
yeah. Well, and I like what Mara said here. If you have a platform, it's a different context, which is also true. If you,
it is.
Yeah. Like, if you have a platform and people are listening to you and you're talking publicly, like, you know, you need to be aware of the responsibility that comes with that.
100%.
And my issue, I agree with that. And my issue is, going back to my previous statement, is you have a platform, you read it for nostalgia, you don't say anything, you don't correct or identify any of the issues in this book, and then you tack on donate to create tribe can move to higher ground. Like, that's performative, because you are not saying that there's anything wrong with this book, but you're adding that because you feel like, if I don't add this, people are going to be up my backside. That's wrong. That's so messed up on so many different levels. I just, and I've seen it, and it rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah. 100%. Actually, I'm with you on that.
I agree.
I've seen it too. And it's making me like, ooh, okay.
Yeah, I've seen it too.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like Edward saying, oh yeah, I'm a stalker, but now it's fine. It reminds me of that. Like, people being like, yeah, this book's been problematic, and now we're going to move on and talk about why I loved it.
And I'm still going to 5-star it, and I'm still going to talk about why I loved it. And yeah.
Yep, I'm a 5-star. Talk about how this is such an amazing book, and then I'm gonna add on that tagline because I know it's what you all want to see from me. Like, save it. If you're a jacked up person, you're a jacked up person. Just leave it at that. Be real. Be you. Be true.
Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. But if anybody wants a more in-depth deep dive, Mari from My Name is Marinez and the Snark Squad are doing chapter by chapter episodes tearing this book apart. So
I saw that.
I read one and I was like cracking up.
So there's that. And she like,
and Ashley did a really good video on that too.
Who?
Ashley,
Who does?
like, I really liked her video. Yeah, for the Nostalgia's Not Enough. I love that. I was watching that while I was doing dishes, and I was like agreeing with everything.
Appreciate it.
Like, I'm also starting to realize through this experience that I think part of it is also just that, like, I miss being a kid. Looking at me. But, like, also, who doesn't? But, like, I don't know. Like, I read these books for the first time when I was a child. Like, I read them when I was too young. Like, we've all discussed this about how I was 9 years old, and, you know. So I think also just like the way that I look at it now is just so skewed. It's just so different because of when I was introduced to it. It's a whole it's a whole factor. It's just and I just like all the moms and the are like, how in the world who let this child read Twilight when she was 9?
Oh goodness, yeah. Yeah. I do think it's one thing that's interesting is I've seen some people come back on these live shows or the vlogs I've done saying like, why are you just tearing it apart? You could do that to anything. And like, I mean, you can't do it to anything, but on the other hand, like, part of the reason of picking this series is because it sold 1 million copies in the first week, is because it's a cultural juggernaut, and because it is so influential. Like, am I going to take some random book that's problematic that like 1,000 people have read and tear it apart? No, of course not, because like it's about reach, and it's about influence, and so yeah, because like I see that sometimes as a criticism of doing this at all, and I just, you know, there are reasons for it. And initially I did it because I liked the series the first time I read it and was like, oh, let's reread it. I bet it's going to be more problematic, but let's try this. And then I disliked it a lot more than
I mean, I don't think we necessarily came into this adventure with ill intent overall.
No.
No ill intent. Like, it also, like, there are so many people who make, like, who read books just to tear them apart anyways. And, like, that's not what you were doing. And, like, even if you are, like, you aren't the only person who's done it. And it's just, I don't know, like,
But
people
I think
just
that brings it
defensive when they love something so much. And there are people who love this series with their whole hearts and soul, with their whole heart and soul, and like it just physically hurts them to see people tearing it apart. And it's like,
but I don't feel like, and that's the misconception. I think a lot of times in the bookish community is that critical analysis is not the equivalent to me of trashing a book or tearing it down.
No,
you are analyzing, or you're analyzing the book for what it presents itself to be. And I think that sometimes it's that whole debate of, well, I just read for fun. But is it really reading for fun if it's harming people or it's perpetuating stereotypes? That's my biggest thing, is that I can't get down. Like, I really went into rereading these thinking like, oh, I used to love I haven't looked at them since I was in high school, and that was ages ago.
Yeah.
So I think, it's not that when it comes to that criticism, oh yeah, you're tearing the Twilight books down. Like, my review for Twilight has gotten the most dislikes since I talked about being Black which is so funny, since I talked about being Black in the community. And it's funny to me that when you,
I'm gonna go like it right now.
When you point out the issues of something, you're saying like, and it's crazy because you're not telling people like, oh, you're a bad person if you like Twilight. I'm not telling you you're a bad person if you like Twilight. What I'm saying to you was that this book is harmful in a lot of ways because it perpetuates stereotypes. It emphasizes unhealthy relationships, or romanticizes unhealthy relationships. It normalizes and romanticizes abuse. And I think those are things, from my perspective as a librarian, that should be made aware of because of the audience that this is being written for. A lot of us read YA, and a lot of us are older than what the audience that these books are written for. YA is not written for people who are 25, 26, 27 years old plus. Yeah. They're not for us. So when I go into, and for YA specifically, when I read YA, I am going to be critical because I'm thinking about the intended audience, which is not me as an adult. Yeah. These are people who are reading these books, who are young, who are impressionable, who look to these books to dictate how they should be living their lives. Like we talked about in our live shows before, Twilight is the first instance of romance that a lot of us saw. And to think that this is how some people, and I had a few people comment on the video saying that they led unhealthy relationships because they felt like what they saw in Twilight was what they were supposed to be looking for.
I've had a couple.
I think that's a conversation that needs to be had, that, if someone is critically analyzing a book, it's not a judgment on you. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. I'm just telling you that these are some issues that probably can influence a population group that you don't even fit into. Yeah. So, I mean, that's me.
I mean, I read that book. I read Twilight when I was a child, and that was my first romance ever. Like that again. Yeah. Like, and so I think that was my first romance ever. I read it when I was 9 years old. I will, like, my viewpoint of it, and I'm fully admitting to this. Like, it's not a secret. Like, it's completely skewed because of that. And so, like, I mean, it's not an excuse, but it's just, it feels a little bit different just because reading that when you're a child, like, to me now I'm realizing just like how bad that was, but then it didn't seem that way because like my best friends were like 2 years older than me, and like it was considered appropriate for them, so they got it for me for my birthday. Like,
yeah. I mean, I think it's I've had similar comments of people who have put up with toxic, abusive relationships because of what they saw in the Twilight series. I do think that's important to talk about. And I also think this is part of why some of the tropes that are used in this series, I'm less bothered by in adult romance. You know, I mean, some of the like the fated mate stuff or the like alpha male. I mean, I still don't like it, but like I'm less bothered by alpha males in adult romance. If you want to be into that, like, okay, whatever. Like you're a grown adult, like you can figure it out. But like when you're talking about teenagers, it is different, you know.
Well, and usually when you read a romance, they're 20s at least, so like they're not fully developed, but like you've usually had some relationships to develop around like what's appropriate, what's not, and yeah, it also feels a little less like gross when it's a vampire who's lived forever and you're 25 or something, and then a 17-year-old who's lived forever. I don't know.
Like I'm also realizing when I first read these books, I didn't even know what sex was. So like just now it's just like it's like just coming like that's another thing with this experience is like is been good at just like realizing just how I get almost I guess like harmful. I don't like using that word because it's not harmful to me in the way that it's been harmful to other people, but I don't like it's just the way that it affected my viewpoint on romance, just things like that and things I didn't even know about. Like I was telling you earlier, like I didn't realize that that's what they were talking about in Twilight, like during that section. Like it's just I don't know, it's crazy to me now to think like it's insane.
Yeah, the completely opposite boat of that. Like for me, growing up, my mom made me watch like more like I've seen like an R-rated movie like a number of times as like a young kid, but like she would always explain like what exactly is wrong and what is like what in that movie would be okay and what in that movie is wrong. So like I saw more visual things growing up. The only thing that my mom did not let me watch was the Tina Turner movie. I think it was. She like kept that one on lock because of like abuse and things like that, and she would never let me watch that. And so like reading that apparently really bad. I still haven't seen it like to this day. I'm 28 years old, still have not seen that movie, but like I can't remember what it's called, but I know that didn't it have Whitney Houston in it, or
no,
was that Angela Bassett?
Angela Bassett. Yes, what's love got to do with it?
Okay, now I can get it.
Yeah, and like my mom never let me watch that. She's a survivor of abuse, and so like she never let me see that as like a child or as like a teenager. Like always kept that movie like locked away. And so when I read Twilight, that's when I was like, this is not okay. I've never seen this. This is not okay. This is not appropriate. Like my friends were all loving it, and I'm like, why? He's such a weirdo. He's such a creeper. Like I DNF'd it the first time ever. I got to like page like 45. I was like, this is freaking weird. And then it was one of my friends that was reading it, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna finish it so I can like talk to you about it. But like I went through like, the whole visual things visually than like reading about it. So like it was kind of a weird experience going through all that, and then seeing the way that like natives are treated in the movie and in the book than in like other movies that I've seen with native representation.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
I just want to say Agent MG17. Yes, it is definitely 50 Shades is definitely Stephenie Meyer's child. It started off as Twilight fan fiction. So it's directly inspired.
But I also think that 50 Shades and all the fan fiction that's spun out from Twilight is a reaction to the purity culture in Twilight. So it's like the anti of what Twilight wanted. And I mean, it is. She didn't want that. And also, in case you didn't know, the name Christian is Stephenie Meyer's husband's name, and E.L. James named the hero in 50 Shades that. So that's extra creepy.
That's creepy.
It's the weirdest little tidbit I ever found out. I was like,
super weird.
Can y'all imagine somebody writing fan fiction about your I'm going to use your husband's name for the character.
That is super creepy. Wow.
I can't with them.
Oh my god.
They're a mess.
And I had to watch 50 Shades of Grey in like in one of my classes last semester. So
wow.
They're a mess.
Wow. Yeah. I do think there's something to be said for reading or viewing things with your kids and using it as a way of talking about stuff. I mean, like, I'm at the point of starting to do that with different things that are sometimes problematic, but like a lot of parents, I think, don't do that. Like, we just finished reading Little House in the Big Woods, which is
by Little House on the Prairie books.
Yeah, which was great, but like it's got some things in it that like open up some big difficult conversations, but like I used it as a way of talking about things and also skipped over the like couple of racist bits. But for the most part, like, I don't know. So I think that's the thing, is like you can use things as a way of having conversations with your kids. I don't know. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm so done with 50 Shades. I had to like watch it and like give a presentation on it in class in the spring semester.
I never had any interest, but also like I do not like dominant men in my romance. And I it's just like not my deal. So yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, I think this might be a good stopping point. Thank you guys all for doing this with me.
Yeah, like, thank you to everyone, like to all of you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, for seeing this. And it's like, because again, like there's all the time, but I view Twilight from a child's perspective because that's what I was when I read it, and this is like helps me to realize that and look at it from a different way, which I think people can agree is valuable and like on my end to have experienced that, like not the reading it as a kid, but like to have experienced this, like picking apart and that realization and what comes from that, which wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Thanks, Isabel. Well, I'm glad it was helpful, and I think it's helped me like push through and actually finish the series. And I don't know, when I have a project I set for myself, I like to finish.
Do you know commercials that were better?
Oh, if it
I
wasn't
don't
for
think
you,
I
I
would've
wouldn't have
continued.
finished any of them.
Oh.
Yeah, same. I think I would have quit halfway.
Yeah, I would have quit. I would have been quit.
Yeah, I was saying even I had to use the audiobook to get through.
And that narrator is too hot to be Edward, so that's a whole other mess.
Well, you know, he was the actor and the host.
I know, but his voice is not Edward. Like, it's too hot. It's not whiny enough.
But
But
he also took an
Right?
author photo too, which I found interesting.
What?
Jake Abel, I think that's his name, Jake Abel. He played the love interest in the host, and he narrates Midnight Sun. But
That's
also,
weird.
I think he took Stephenie Meyer's author photo, like it's on.
That's so
So
interesting.
I
this
think
lady
they're
has
friends.
so many connections to just weird things.
But she's weird. She's strange. She has problems.
Yeah.
She's-
Well, we did it. We finished. This was, I think, hopefully an entertaining live show. So thanks to everybody for joining in. I'm seeing lots of comments. I'm glad everybody enjoyed the conversation at least. So, all right. Well, we are done. Thank you to everybody, and have a good night. We're gonna say goodbye to the live.